It's the 20th century, and the FBI is targeting the Mafia. In the crowd of traitors and convictions, a young Mafia boss took the necessary step to defend his crime family and make a fool of the FBI. This is the story of the youngest Mafia boss who outsmarted the FBI. Joseph Colombo was born right into the depth of crime in Brooklyn, New York. His father, Anthony Colombo, was a member of the Profaci crime family, one of New York's 5 mafia families. At this point, the Profaci family was led by Giuseppe Profaci. The brutality of the underworld struck close to home when teen Colombo found the strangled body of his father and his girlfriend in a car in 1938. He soon dropped out of high school after this to join the U.S. Coast Guard. However, he just served for 3 years before being discharged in 1945 due to a necrosis diagnosis. After leaving service, Colombo tried his hands on a couple of jobs to support his livelihood. He worked as a dock worker, meat salesman, and even a real estate agent. To an ordinary person, Colombo was just a young man trying to make his way out in the world. But in actuality, he was using these jobs to build connections with New York City's criminal underworld. Colombo was a master of deceit, and he continued that false facade. He got married to Lucille Fallio and began to raise a family. At the young age of 21, Colombo had successfully created a fake appearance of a hard-working family man. As he maintained his public persona, his ties with the Mafia got stronger, and Colombo dived deeper to get his hands dirty. Rise through the ranks. He melded with the same crime family his father associated with. Colombo began as enforcer for the Profaci crime family and was responsible for enforcing the mob's rules through intimidation and violence. He brought nice results, and soon his loyalty and effectiveness made him a valuable asset. He was made capo after a while, but at this point, trouble was simmering beneath. This was the 1950s, and tensions grew as Joe Gallo, also known as Crazy Joe, began to rebel against the family's leadership. Crazy Joe felt that he and his allies weren't getting their fair share of the profits. So on February 27, 1961, Crazy Joe and his associates made a bold move, kidnapping 4 of the gang's top members. This act triggered an intense internal conflict known as the First Colombo War, marking the start of a bloody power struggle within the family. Mafia War. This conflict divided the Profaci crime family into 2 factions, Crazy Joe and his allies on one side, and the rest of the family on the other. Over the next few years, both sides targeted each other in a brutal string of hits. The Profaci loyalists weren't messing around, and they made this close to Crazy Joe. At some point in 1961, one of Crazy Joe's men vanished into thin air. Then his clothes were filled with dead fish and left outside a bar popular amongst Crazy Joe's men. This was a Mafia symbol of death, and they were letting Crazy Joe know that they meant business. Crazy Joe's brother almost met a similar end, but he narrowly escaped the group of mafiosos that were attempting to strangle him. While this was going on, Colombo chose his best bet to win the war, and this was the Profaci loyalists. This automatically made him a human target for Crazy Joe's, and in July 1963, he was almost ambushed on his drive back home, but he learned of this very fast and took a different route, narrowly avoiding the attack. This war set the stage for Colombo to rise further up the ranks. The catalyst Crazy Joe was arrested, and the war finally looked like it was ready to settle down. However, this seemed unlikely because the war claimed a lot of lives, with many going missing. And just when it seemed that there might be a glimpse of peace, the head of the family, Joe Profaci, passed away. This made his underboss, Joe Magliocco, take control of the family. However, Magliocco formed an alliance with Joseph Bonanno and tried to set the stage for another power shift in the Mafia. Bonanno had an ambitious plan to eliminate 2 other Mafia bosses, Carlo Gambino and Thomas Lucchese, in a bid to take control of New York's organized crime scene. Magliocco quickly agreed to the plot and tapped Colombo to handle the assassinations. But Colombo saw an opportunity in this risky assignment. He had future plans for himself, and these two were only going to get in his way. So instead of carrying out the murders, he betrayed his bosses by revealing the plan to Gambino. After catching wind of this, Bonanno went into hiding, anticipating severe retaliation from the Mafia Commission, while Magliano pleaded for forgiveness. As punishment, the commission stripped Magliano of his leadership role in the Profaci family. In a twist, they rewarded Colombo for his loyalty and foresight, appointing him as the new head of the Profaci family. And the name of the family changed from Profaci to Colombo. Outsmarting the FBI, at just 41, Colombo became the youngest mafia boss in New York City. Leading a crew of up to 200 men, Colombo directed various criminal enterprises, including loan sharking, extortion, and narcotics trafficking. His first major act as boss, however, was to end the First Colombo War by establishing a peace agreement with Crazy Joe's supporters, finally bringing stability to the family. After settling internal conflicts, he turned towards external forces, aka the FBI. The FBI was drawing closer to the family, which was garnering a lot of attention in the mafia world. The trail of bodies that the Colombo War left behind was bound to get their attention sooner or later. And it did. Colombo knew he had to do something to throw them off guard and protect his mafia family. So he did what he knew how to do best, creating a masterpiece facade. In April 1970, he launched the Italian-American Civil Rights League, which he claimed was aiming to combat discrimination against Italian Americans, when in reality, he was using the group to throw the FBI off his tail, and it worked. Colombo was really big on the activism side of this group and openly challenged the FBI for being discriminatory towards Italian Americans. He claimed that the FBI only saw those of Italian descent as affiliated with the mob, and this group went on rallies to oppose this. Through the league, he mobilized large protests and rallies, and even raised funds to campaign against the FBI's portrayal of Italian Americans as criminals. The protests got so intense that the U.S. Attorney General had to get the Department of Justice and the FBI to stop using the word mafia. Colombo's ability to rally the Italian American community under the League's banner forced the FBI into a difficult position. They couldn't aggressively investigate him without appearing to confirm his allegations of ethnic profiling, which helped him avoid scrutiny for some time. Colombo was so big on the protests and didn't stop his protests at just the FBI. At the height of his power, Joe Colombo was influential enough to nearly halt the production of Francis Ford Coppola's iconic 1972 film, The Godfather. Claiming that the movie would reinforce harmful stereotypes about Italian Americans, Colombo initially threatened to use his influence to stop the project. But when the film's producer approached him to discuss a compromise, Colombo agreed not to interfere, as long as all mentions of the word mafia or cosa nostra were removed from the script. He also insisted that proceeds from the premiere be donated to his Italian-American Civil Rights League. The FBI lowered their attention on the Colombo family, and Colombo's plan was working up until it wasn't. Crazy Joe got out of prison in 1971, and he was surprised to see how much things changed. He learned that his old crew had signed a peace treaty with the family, but he wasn't planning to honor it. Crazy Joe dismissed the agreement, arguing it was invalid since he hadn't been involved when it was made. His refusal to honor the truce signaled a looming threat to the family. However, Colombo didn't allow the threat to get to him and continued as usual. On June 28, 1971, Colombo organized a major Italian Unity Day rally with his Italian-American Civil Rights League. But just as he was preparing to address the crowd, a gunman emerged and shot him 3 times in the back of the head. This attack was one of the boldest mob hits in history, as it was carried out in broad daylight before a massive audience. Panic erupted and witnesses began to shout, "They got Colombo!" The crowd quickly captured the attacker before he escaped. The shooter was Jerome Johnson, but in the chaos of the attack, he was also shot by an unknown gunman. and this added more mystery to the event. The police quickly suspected that Joe Colombo's shooting was Mafia-related, and many pointed to Crazy Joe as a likely mastermind, suggesting he'd hired Jerome Johnson for the job. However, investigators could never link Crazy Joe or anyone else in New York's crime families to the attack. About 9 months later, on April 7, 1972, an unknown Mafia hitman shot Crazy Joe dead while he was dining at Umberto's Clam House in Little Italy, and people couldn't help but connect the dots. Colombo's life didn't end immediately after the attack. Although doctors managed to save him, he was left paralyzed and semi-comatose. For the next 7 years, Colombo lived in poor health at his Brooklyn home before passing away on May 22, 1978. For more dark stories of the underworld, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell to never miss an update.